Hey everyone, and welcome back. This is the No Questions Left Behind, a follow-up to our basic polishing YouTube live that we did earlier this week. We got a ton of questions.
Yeah, a lot, several pages.
So we're not gonna waste any time, but keep in mind that if you ask a lot of questions and we didn't answer them, this is what we're gonna do. And we are giving some stuff away, and we also wanted to let you know or remind you that our 20% off liquid car care sale is ongoing. It started with that live, so more reason for you to subscribe and hit the notification bell as it relates to following us here on YouTube. We love giving stuff away, and we definitely have some winners in this list of questions. So, liquid car care sale and giveaways are reason to continue to watch this, and let's jump in and answer some questions.
Yeah, code's right down there in the corner if you need it.
The first one comes from Matt, who was part of our live, and says, will this be available to watch later? Speaking of the YouTube live, yes, it is on our YouTube channel under the live playlist, as are all of our past lives. So these do live on our YouTube channel. So they can be of further reference. They are deep dives into a multitude of topics. For polishing, we also have our advanced polishing seminar that we've done in the past. That is there once you watch the basic one. Go polish your car, get some confidence, and want to learn more.
Clint asked for explanation of differences between the complete line of products and the Boss line of products. We covered that briefly in the initial live, but basically short answer, the complete line of products are great beginner products. These are gonna cost you a little bit less money. They're great for standard orbital use, so 8mm throw or 9mm throw orbitals and hand use, so you can use them with either. These are gonna give you a really nice result. For the top level of polishing experience and performance, we have the Boss creams. So the Boss creams are gonna be intended for long throw orbital applications as well as standard throw orbital applications. Long throws cause more heat and friction to the surface, so these will withstand that heat and friction better than the complete line of products will, giving you a longer buffing cycle, longer working time, less dust, and so on, while providing a first-in-class finish and really good cutting capability with fast correcting cream and correcting cream, and then your final finishing ability with perfecting cream and finishing sealant. So it's probably the quickest I've ever described those.
Yeah, we also had a couple questions that are, while we're still on the topic of compounds, we didn't get to talk a lot about them yesterday.
True.
We had a user, I can't find him here just yet because we've got over 10 pages of questions. He was asking about the type of abrasives that are featured within our polishes, whether they're diminishing or submicron. All of the polishes that we just referenced feature submicron abrasive technology. They are non-diminishing. They are high-grade aluminum oxide abrasives. And in particular, when you're talking about things designed by hand, as we mentioned yesterday in the basic polishing, they will tend to have larger abrasive sizes because they are compensating for the lack of abrasion that hand polishing provides relative to machine polishing. Whereas in the Boss line, they're even finer submicron abrasive polishers down to the 1.5 micron level, very small, which will not necessarily be as effective by hand. Could you use these by hand in a pinch? Without a doubt. They're just optimized for machine and in particular, long throw orbital use. So that covers a couple other questions that we had related to these products. I think it's still my turn to pick. Okay, should we start out with a winner?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Mr. 441 asked a ton of questions. I know because I had to sort and purge all of the emojis and BS that was and bad dad jokes that were in our comment section. But he asked one of the great questions, is any chance of a solution for polishing rims, grills, or under door handles? Kind of a lot of different solutions in one question. So in particular, when it comes to rims and grills, you can 100% use our machine polishers and a foam pad or any of the pad setups we spoke about on wheels and grills. Now, the biggest differentiation is going to be what is the finish on those two surfaces. We have a ceramic metal polish that can be used by machine on raw metal components and chrome. As we mentioned yesterday, chrome is a finite amount of material. You want to be gentle in your application there. Heavy oxidation is problematic, but it can also mean that the chrome is completely compromised. So you can use all these products there, and you can protect them with a lot of our surface protection products. I tend to like ceramic all-in-one quite a bit for those types of products, or for those types of spaces. And then as it relates to under door handles, that's just a really tight spot. So you can use either the GR3 or the micro polisher in a rotary function to get down into those spaces, or if your door handle is not so concave, whatever, I sound like an idiot either way. You might be able to get one of those small backing plates in an orbital pattern to kind of touch the bottom. I know in my Jeep Wagoneer, they're very shallow, and the door handle is so thin, I was able to actually get the stroke of the orbital to dive in from the top and then start over from the bottom and move up, and got the door handle that way. But ultimately, small pad and rotary function is going to be the way to get in there. And we have this tool and the GR3, which we showed you yesterday in rotary patterns. Just be careful if you're just learning rotary to not overcook it. You will generate more heat that way, but that's a way to do it, or you can also do it by hand similarly. So great question, 441, covered a lot of ground there. It's typical of a lot of your questions. So be sure to email us at social@griotsgarage.com to claim your two-step wax and polish kit and or whatever accessories you may not have if you already have some of those products. So social@griotsgarage.com. Let's keep going.
Yeah, great questions. Let's see, Joey Kyler asked a good one that I haven't heard a lot of before. But any kind of advice on how aluminum-bodied cars paint will react versus a steel-bodied car, steel panel? So aluminum versus steel. In real-world polishing and paint correction, I've never noticed enough of a difference to really translate to any differences in risks or results. However, aluminum will definitely dissipate heat faster, so those panels aren't going to hold heat as long. If you are doing an aggressive polishing step, you shouldn't, see the panel holding or staying hot for as long as a steel panel would. Like I said, in reality, I've never noticed any difference that it's easier to burn a steel panel than it is an aluminum panel or anything like that. That's going to be more impacted by the condition of the paint and what process you're doing. So short answer is no, but aluminum will definitely dissipate heat faster.
Well, in real world application, if you've got to wash your car outside and it's hot and you're already struggling with that, and doing, moving inside to do your decon, obviously aluminum dissipating heat, it's going to cool off faster. You're going to have less time in there. So good benefit. All right, I've got two really quick ones from Sean Kellogg. Any brushless versions, brushless, can you tell I talked a lot last night? Jeez. Brushless versions of your tools. The hybrid micro polisher is our one and only brushless motor tool. We get the benefit of super quiet operation, efficient power delivery, and the unique aspect that small brushless motor, while having high output, is compact enough to fit in the head of this tool. More brushless options. Definitely would love to do more just because of the lack of vibration, the efficiency, the ability to adapt to lithium-ion power. But yeah, the brushless is a very expensive technology, and all of our other motors are brushed. And we do have replacement brushes with all of those. That's one of the maintenance questions we got last night that we failed to address. And then on the back of that, Mike Jones asks, when is the power inverter for the micro polisher going to be launched? We had intended to launch that with the tool when it debuted earlier this year in the springtime. We had a little bit of developmental issues around the mold for that. We're going to be showing it off at SEMA this year, so it's not really a secret. But hopefully production is going to be right behind that, if not happening concurrently, so that we can advertise them not only in their final form, but for sale at SEMA this year. So not long now, but yes, we're behind on that one, and it's a wonderful benefit of this tool. For those of you that are unaware, the inverter allows you to plug in the standard power cord that powers all the other tools we showed last night and run this thing as if it were a corded tool. So you've got the dual power source.
Yeah, did some testing on a couple cars I was detailing with a final prototype of that and got some great performance. So definitely looking forward to that coming out.
Actually, the next question is, anything in the works for a nano polisher from Chris Grosso? Hopefully you're new to the Griot's Garage family, so you don't know that, but yes, this is it.
Yep.
The Boss Hybrid micro polisher. So that's our nano equivalent. Go check it out on griotsgarage.com. It is a hell of a tool.
Goes down to 1 inch. Corey Bonner asked a good beginner question. As a beginner, which should be used, complete polish or complete compound? I would recommend buying both, having both available to you as a beginner. They're both great beginner products. Complete compound would be used for your initial cutting step to remove moderate to severe defects. Complete polish would be used as your final polish in the event that it is needed. If you want to stick with something that's gonna be a little lighter, if you're really just getting started and want to eliminate any and all risk, complete polish would be the one to start with. However, these are both very safe products, so I would definitely encourage you to use them both and see what their strong suits and limitations are. But those are great places to start, relatively low investment for the two of them. Great results, especially compared, and user experience compared to what else is out there on the market in that category. So definitely pick them both up and get to work.
So we had a couple of good questions from Ken V as well. And this one is one that is important. This is a real world issue for sure. Bird dropping etching. Can polishing it out work or no? There are two answers to this question, and it's really dependent on the amount of time that bird dropping has spent on your painted surface. So if it has a chance to bond or heat up in the sun, it most likely will etch beyond the depth of typical machine polishing's ability to completely remedy. If you see it quickly and the etching is minor, sure, polishing should be able to remedy that. But in most cases, if you're looking at an old bird dropping etching, it's probably below or deep enough that wet sanding might be the only remedy for that. So that is unfortunate. That's why you carry some speed shine in your car with you all the time. We have a lot of trees in Washington, beautiful. We've got bald eagles. Have you ever seen a bald eagle express itself or relieve itself? It looks like the carpet bombing that took place in World War II. So yeah, you want to be quick to clean that one up.
Neil Gage asked, as a newbie, how do I know which pads to use to polish or cut, etc.? So we talked about that a little bit, but again, we didn't spend a ton of time on pads. Really, that's going to be guided by the density of the pads, which we mentioned. But the softer pads, such as your black, yellow pad in the Boss line, are going to be used for polishing. And then your firmer pads, such as the white foam, orange foam, microfiber and wool pads, are going to be used for your cutting or your more aggressive defect removal. Orange tends to be right in the middle for moderate stuff, and then the white foam and the microfiber or wool pads will be primarily for your deep stuff or your more severe defects. So, quick answer.
Yeah, extreme details. Can we get some of Nick's hair product regimen? No, that is a trade secret. And Jeff Warren asks, can you polish PPF? Short answer is yes. However, you want to be, if you don't know the age of your PPF, this is where we start kind of parsing that answer. Really old, like 3M products, some of which were factory installed. I know there's some fender guards on like a old 993 Porsche that at some point yellow, crack, lose their pliability, but they also do kind of show swirl marks. They can be brightened, but I would definitely recommend testing a small, inconspicuous area if the PPF is not omnipresent around the car. A lot of modern films actually have self-healing characteristics, so when heat is introduced them, like a deeper gouge will actually level out, so you won't need to try and chase that gouge. But they can also suffer from some swirl marks or marring that could be clarified. My preference, if you're going to attempt polishing, is something mild like an all-in-one. I'd say our ceramic all-in-one is ideal, or a perfecting cream or correcting cream, something mild. And again, test an inconspicuous spot. PPF can also be protected, in particular with our ceramic 3-in-1 wax, ceramic speed shine. But with that ceramic all-in-one, mild polish, and it's going to leave protection behind.
Yeah.
Hopefully stave off oxidation if that's what you're worried about with the PPF. But yeah, if it's really old, it may not be curable, but oxidation might be minimized. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, like you said, if it's yellowed or cracking, it's probably past the point. But
And those old 3M products, the OG films are notorious for yellowing out and cracking.
I did a detail of the C4 Corvette not too long ago, and it had a strip of PPF under the hardtop where the hardtop was laid down, and that had a lot of scuffing and like black residue from the hardtop seal, some swirl marks, and I was able to get it looking much nicer than I expected to be. I ended up using correcting cream, so that was a good solution on that finish, but like you said, doesn't always work. Bearded Brian asks, can you polish plastics and glass? Yes, you absolutely can. We have glass polishing pads and a fine glass polish for use specifically on glass. Typically, paint products aren't quite aggressive enough for glass because it's such a hard surface, so we have dedicated pads. They're a rayon fiber and then a cerium oxide-based fine glass polish for use removing water spots and things like that. Keep in mind, scratches in glass typically will not come out via polishing. Most cases, if you have deep scratches, you're either going to have to deal with them or replace the glass altogether. And then plastics, you can absolutely polish plastics. Be sure they're either clear or glossy plastics. Don't try to polish a textured matte or satin piece of trim, or you will change the appearance of it, the intended appearance of it. But glossy plastics like black B-pillars, glossy black, piano black trim on an interior, or clear plastics like headlights and taillights can be polished. And we may or may not be launching a product in the next live during SEMA, so make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss it.
Trade secret. Soon enough. All right. So it was actually Mr. 441 who was our original winner who asked about diminishing abrasive versus abrasive size. So again, he was on one, really participating. I don't know how we missed him, but again, be sure to email us social@griotsgarage.com. Did you hear that laughing too loudly is illegal in Hawaii? They only permit a low ha.
That's pretty
Funny
good.
fart loads.
That's a pretty good one.
Sorry, that one made it through.
He was really fired off too. He was trying hard to get us. We had to focus on the topic.
The rest of them weren't very good. Okay, Bearded Brian asks, who also a great participant, corded versus cordless plus and minuses. Anytime you can drop a cord off and maintain capability, that's a net benefit. It's not something that you've got to lug around. It gives you the ability to move quite freely. Cords drag on the ground, and if they touch their paint, they can abrade the paint. That's why we recommend throwing them over your shoulder. I will say that initial cordless options in the machine polishing realm were pretty limited because a lot of cordless tools like a impact wrench or a screwdriver, they don't have like hardcore run cycles of multiple minutes, which when running and generating some heat, that heat will diminish battery life. Whereas a polisher will run for 2 to 5 minutes per section that you're working, so it will eat batteries a little faster. I've got to say, our cordless tool here paired with the brushless motor, that brushless motor is very efficient, very low heat. You get a lot of battery life out of this. We say 45 minutes of runtime. That's about what I averaged every time I was using it when I was doing my Jeep. Some of the bigger long throw tools, we do have some competitors that have 18 and 20 volt options on a 15 millimeter throw. Some of the tools are pretty heavy. That's probably the biggest downside I could say to the cordless outside of battery management. But I would say corded tools, you get consistent delivery. With the innovation we had with the disconnectable cord, you don't necessarily have a liability in that your cord connection could be compromised over time. But yeah, cordless is great. The biggest downside is weight, battery consumption relative to runtime in our specific application of polishing. And I would say that corded tools are going to just be a little bit lighter, totally effective, consistent power, no battery management, and really the cord is not that big a deal. And the cordless tools are definitely going to be a jump up in terms of their expense, both in terms of obtaining multiple batteries to complete a full job, and just price point in general. The good ones are $400, $500.
Yeah, and you're still, I'd say battery technology has come a long way. Some of the run times are getting longer, but you're still in the realm where you're gonna have to swap batteries, especially if you're doing a full car. I would say I didn't like cords near as much until we started the quick disconnect cord. And that really, only having to have one cord run across your garage and swap it between all your tools makes it much cleaner, much less cumbersome using a corded tool.
Less trip hazards. In particular if you guys are drinking sodas. I will also say the weight element on a cordless polisher that's a large format definitely upsets the balance. So your back arm, where we were kind of suggesting last night, is really just a balancing, a steadying hand. It now becomes a counterbalancing. You've got some weight that you're applying to keep that pad face flat. As you move your way around the car.
Definitely.
Not knocking them, just you ask the differences, and there we go.
Jeff Warren asked, do you moisten pads with water before you start? No, we do not recommend that. There are manufacturers of polishing compounds and things like that do recommend that. Our products don't need it because typically it's used to lubricate and help prevent dust. Our products are very low dusting, if any dust is generated, and they have very high lubricity as is. So I would actually advise against it in most situations. You definitely do not want to do it if you're using our products. It can increase the chance of sling, make more of a mess. It's also just an extra step that you have to do. Pick a high grade product that's tested well and does its job and doesn't dust a ton, has good lubricity out of the bottle, and you shouldn't need to do it.
I think that's the biggest thing with a lot of manufacturers that recommend spraying water is that they have a high dusting compound, and so you're just adding a little bit of moisture to prevent the heat of polishing from prematurely
and the dust from kicking out of the pad.
So they're not doing it with chemistry. They're asking you to put more water down. So no, it's not necessary. But you saw us butter that pad to essentially lubricate it the first time. Okay, this is one that we got a lot of questions about. A lot of people were kind of firing off about it too. I don't know where this trend started, so maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but do you have to use a new pad with hand polishing after every panel like you do with machine polishing? So first of all, I don't recommend needing a brand new pad section to section, panel to panel. We definitely showed you how to clean your pad after completing a panel, either with a pad conditioning brush or condensed air. However, if you are inexperienced in terms of judging when a pad's getting too loaded up to continue, then I think that, yes, that's probably the base case. Switch your pads more often. We would definitely encourage that to ensure consistency if you don't have one of those pad cleaning tools or you just don't know. In my mind, a couple of the rules of thumb that I have used over the years are if I'm consistently cleaning the pad face to open the pores of the pad back up, and that's really easy to see when you're dealing with a fiber, you stand them back up versus them getting knocked down. Then I also look at the side profile of the pad. If I see product seeping up into the depth of the pad itself, generally it's about a third for me. I will know that that pad is carrying too much weight, which will definitely lead to excess vibration. And another way to tell if it's not going up into the pad and you're not able to see that is if after you stop polishing a panel, heat is retained for a prolonged period of time. If that pad is not cooling down, it is not ventilating, it is not letting air come through it, it's probably clogged up with product. That's a good time to change the pad. Now, if you're doing a single stage car, as we mentioned, and you're picking up a lot of material and paint, I would say you probably have to use a pad per panel or per section just because of the material that will be embedded in the pad that will affect its performance and add weight to it. So depending on the paint type, most modern cars are going to have clear coat. You're not going to get loaded up. But if you're doing something old, that's probably a good rule of thumb. If you're a beginner and don't know what you're doing or don't know how to tell, sure, one pad per panel. In general, not necessary with proper cleaning, but at some point, you should be changing pads, and we recommended about 4 to 6 pads per process per car.
Yeah, like you said, it's not going to hurt anything swapping every panel. You're definitely going to get solid, consistent results that way. But if you're a beginner, that's probably a little intimidating to think, well, crap, I have to buy like 12 pads.
You want to buy 12 pads, so let's go right
car.
ahead, but I think that's probably, we are also seeing the opposite of people saying, of course you can use one pad to do the entire car. I wouldn't recommend that either.
I would definitely not recommend that.
Yeah, that's a stretch.
Swapping pads every panel is better than trying to run one for the whole car.
Only exception being you do, a third of the car, wash the pad, let it dry out overnight. Yeah, you can get away with one pad. But if you're trying to do it all in one go, multiple pads is the way to go.
Yeah, definitely.
Got a lot of questions. Really appreciate you guys.
Really good ones.
I think we're going to keep that key code for our 20% off liquid car care sale up the whole time, just in case we inspire you at any point in time. So really appreciate you guys' business. And we've done that topic multiple times now, and the attendance and view rate that we received last night, it's just a real blessing to know that we put some effort and energy behind it, and you guys watch and you're learning something. We hopefully are teaching you something, or if you've bought the machine, it's sitting in your garage, give you the inspiration to go actually put it to work and learn something.
Alan Friedlander asked, do you use a damp cloth to remove the polish? So we already answered about adding water to pads, but when removing the residue that you've put on the finish during the process, whether it's a polish or a compound that you're using, typically, again, you don't need to use a damp cloth. All of our products wipe off very easily with a dry microfiber. I really like the Ultra Plush or the Plush edgeless towels. A good plush towel is going to give you that thick nap to hold more of that residue. Of course, turn your towel as you go so you're not just moving the residue around. And you can always use a product, I don't think we have any up here. Oh, there it is, right in front of me. Surface Prep Cleanser. If you are getting a situation where the residue is a little sticky, some paint types can cause residue to stick a little more, or if you walked away and left the polish residue on a little longer than you wanted to, you can spray a spritz or two of Surface Prep Cleanser off, and that will help wipe it up, strip the surface in the process, and prepare it to accept a protectant afterwards.
Yeah, great question. All right, this is non-polishing related, but this is a quick one, so I'm going to take 2. All right, Island Digital says, first time here from Orlando. He has a new Mazda CX-5 Carbon Edition that has a rubberized dashboard. He's afraid to put the wrong product on it. What product? And towels or applicators. So, baseline product that you would be using on this, if it were organic stains, I would definitely say interior cleaner is going to be safe. If you're just looking for UV protection, something that won't change the look of it and remove, say, dusting and fingerprints, interior detailer. That is definitely not going to affect the appearance or change it in any way. Both those products are going to be safe on it. You can use our green interior towels or just a low nap, microfiber towel of some sort, obviously a clean one. If you're trying to dress that rubberized material and make it have some gloss and additional UV protection, our vinyl and rubber dressing is probably the best product that I find for interiors, because it is not very silicone rich, it is not sticky, it is not intensely high gloss, which those high silicone, intense high gloss dressings, they attract a lot of dust and they off-gas onto your windshield, making your windows get dirty quicker. If you like the greasy interior look, I hope you like what comes along with greasy interiors.
Yeah. Is that your second one?
No.
Did you have another?
For Staying Rider, one asks, and we were talking about lighting a lot.
Yep.
For weekend warriors, the slim LED work light, another product we sell, it definitely has the utility to be hung from a hood when you're doing engine work. Multitude of other places got a magnetic base. Is that enough of light intensity for a weekend warrior? The answer is yes. You just want some focused light on the space and be able to play with that light and move it around easily to see, am I improving it? Am I sensing that or seeing that distortion, which was so obvious in that overhead shot that we were showing last night, where as you played from the hand polish and the light was getting blasted out and obviously distorted versus the machine, much more refined, clean reflection. Yeah, you'll be able to see that with that chip on board lighting panel that is on the slim LED light. There you go, Staying Rider.
Yeah, all right. Jason Gray asked a good one. Said, first timer here, is there a difference in quality of polish you get from a rotary versus an orbital? We covered this very briefly, but rotaries will typically never be used for finishing work. So yes, there is a difference in the quality of the end result that you get from a rotary versus an orbital. It's very difficult. You have to have tons of experience to get a rotary to produce a nice finish in terms of no holograms, no haze, nothing like that, no swirls. Whereas a random orbital is very easy to get a nice finish, nice end result with. So, could you in theory finish with a rotary? If you have the experience and the know-how, probably, but you still may not get quite as good of a finish as what you would with a random orbital. Really all the professionals I know that use rotary tools use that as their first, cutting step for removing sanding scratches after a sanding process or very deep, severe defects, and then they finish with a random orbital. So,
and the guys that don't are like very inexpensive body shops that
yeah,
finish down to a rotary level where they then introduce a paint glaze to hide the holograms and swirl marks that rotary, and the polishes that are designed for rotaries tend to leave behind. And for you, the car may look great until you wash it, that glaze washes off and all the bad workmanship is exposed. So good detailers know that it's a two-step process, and rotary has its benefits and DA has its benefits. But yeah, definitely easier to achieve perfect finish when DA, dual action, is your last step.
If you're looking to buy your first tool, Jason, definitely go with an orbital and then step up later.
So Steve Y says, how do I determine how aggressive I can be with polishing? I have personal cars, both with two-stage and single-stage paint, and I don't want to remove too much of either, obviously. We mentioned it very briefly, and this is something that we would definitely talk about more in an advanced polishing class with regards to, hey, I know I'm going to do multiple steps. I'm seeking perfection. Or, if you buy a lot of cars or sell a lot of cars, this tool might become more essential to you, and that is a paint thickness gauge. We do sell one here at Griot's Garage. The only limitation with paint thickness gauges is they tend to operate based upon metal surfaces, so they are only inaccurate or non-functional unless you go really high end and buy one that is $1,000+ to measure paint thickness on plastics, right? It's essentially a magnetic reading that measures the thickness of the material between the metallic substrate or body panel and the top of your paint system, which is primer, color coat, and potentially clear. So measuring is the ultimate way to understand how much material you have. Resprays tend to be 10+ mils. Factory finishes are going to be anywhere from a brand new paint system might be 7 to 8 mils. An older used car might be in the 5s and 6s. That's still plenty of material to work with. And with the minor approach that we coach, you're not going to remove even tenths of a mil with a single process. So you should have a lot of material. But I will say with single stage older paints, we have a 59 Buick Invicta. Both of us wanted to measure every inch of that car because as a teenager, I burned through an edge with a very mild polish just because it was that old.
Yeah,
So measuring is the ultimate step. And then if you have that paint measuring gauge and you go to buy a car, you can establish, whether it's been repainted either by your naked eye or by measuring the paint around the car and, potentially using that to your advantage as leverage.
Definitely.
And used car dealers, they never lie, so.
Never. Mr. 441 asked another great question. How can we tell if the working time on a polish is over? All the Boss creams seem to have a long time, but I'm less confident when they are spent. Great question, something that is kind of tough to tell, especially if you're relatively new. And that's, part of it is going to be experience. If you're using the Boss creams, you don't really have to worry because they all have a very long buffing cycle or working time. I would say, most of those are going to be good for 7 to 10 passes before they're really starting to dry out. And even then, you could probably go longer than that in most situations. But you'll be able to tell the product will typically, some products will start kicking out a lot more dust as they dry up. There's some other, competitors of ours, I'm not going to mention any names, where, beyond 5 passes or so, especially if you're using pressure, you'll start to see dust flying off the pad. That means you need to reapply product and clean the pad first, of course. And then the other one is the kind of the flow and how it looks on the panel. A product with a good buffing cycle will flow out really nicely. You'll see that kind of stacked dime look on the panel in a nice consistent nature. If that starts to get inconsistent and you can tell, it'll be kind of a more gray, noticeable residue that's not consistently flowing over the panel as you go. That probably means it's starting to run out of time as well.
Yeah, this next question is right on the back of that. Dennis Barrios, who was very active, he was a winner when we recorded this or when we did it live. How do you know you've worked the compound polish enough?
Yep.
Kind of on the back of that. And I would argue that the Boss creams have such great working time that, you're not going to dry them up unless you're really intending to. And if you're going that far, you're probably generating a lot of temperature on the panel.
Yeah.
And you should probably stop and check your work.
Well, the goal is to get the defects out, not necessarily work the compound or polish.
And remove as much,
to its limit.
more paint than is necessary, which is ultimately, part of the goal is getting the result you want and no more. Whether that be, I don't need it to be perfect on a daily driver versus it does need to be perfect for this concours that it's going to, and doing exactly what you need to get that finished. That's why we recommend test sections. And this speaks directly to my answer for Dennis. I would suggest if you are being deliberate about counting passes and stopping at some point in time in your test area, say you do 4 passes and you're not getting the result you want after you wipe the excess product off. I would say do 2 more and understand, is the difference between 4 and 6 what I'm seeking? If you get to a point where you're doing 10 passes to get the result you want, you might want to think about a more aggressive pad or more aggressive compound overall. But ultimately, it is that test panel establishing, am I getting the result I want? Stopping after a reasonable amount of time, which I would think would be 4 to 5 passes, so that you're not doing 10 passes unnecessarily, or you're not doing 2 and thinking that you're getting the full potential out of the product when it's somewhere between there. So checking your work on that test panel, cycling your pads. It's not necessarily, am I getting every ounce of potential out of this polish, as we mentioned. It's, am I getting the result I want as efficiently as possible?
Yep. Yeah, and on the back of that with the test section, we had a couple questions about how do we determine the level of polishing that's needed. If you're a beginner, you're not going to be able to look at the paint and say, oh, I know this combination is going to work. So that test section that Nick just mentioned is integral into understanding the paint, how much it needs without going too far or going more aggressive than you need to. So always do a test section. I like doing my initial test section, especially if it's paint I'm unfamiliar with. Orange pad on a product like Complete Compound or Correcting Cream, something kind of in the middle of the road. Do 4 to 6 passes, assess the finish after. Like Nick said, if it's close, you could do another pass or 2. If you have a long ways to go, you probably need to step down to a more aggressive combo. But test sections are crucial. I do on every single car that I do. because that's what's going to set you up as, okay, this is the process that I'm going to use over the majority of the car.
Yeah, only exception to that is if the car has original paint, has been repainted, you might, if you know where that line is, you might have to change your process up mid-flight.
Yep.
If it's consistently, fully refinished or OEM finish, a test panel is going to guide your process for the entirety of the car. Again, another exception being extreme weather conditions, extreme oxidation on your flat panels might require a little bit more work than your sides and vertical panels. But yeah, this is a learned art, and that is why we recommend, first do no harm. You can always do more, you can't undo, so that middle of the road process and testing and checking your work is going to be how you learn, and then determine where you want to go from there. It's a wormhole once you get in here. But at the very basic approach that we coached through last night, you're going to be able to improve your car and be happy with it. If you're still not happy, guess what? You've got plenty of other options, plenty of ways to go, and you'll eventually be happy. All right, so Mr. 441, he, again, just continues to ask some really good questions. How long should a standard size car take to do one step of polishing with a G9? So that is going to be dependent upon if, for example, an all-in-one product on a well-maintained car, for me, that's my wife's car that's getting its annual polish, and I generally only do one step. Her Suburban, if I exclude the washing and preparatory steps, it's going to take about an hour and a half of polishing over the entirety of the car for one step. Now, like a standard sedan, I'd say probably the same, about an hour and a half. I mean, this is a well-maintained car.
Yeah.
A car that has never been corrected before, and you're intending to do one correction step with a more aggressive compound and then simply protect it, which could be correcting cream. It might take a little bit longer because you might be doing more passes. But on her car, I'm suggesting, depending on the size of the car, hour and a half to 2 hours. And yeah, you'll get a workout from that, but it's going to be really dependent on the amount of passes you do per panel. If you're going to fight your pads and try and extend their life, they're going to start taking longer, so swapping pads can create some efficiencies. But yeah, I think I'm in decent shape and have been doing this for long enough that, if I'm going soup to nuts, wash, decon, polish, and then going inside, I'm probably spending 5 to 6 hours doing all of that. But narrowing it down to the actual polishing process with an all-in-one product, when the machine is on, hour and a half.
Kevin Clancy asks, how do you know how big of a section you should be working on at a time? So another good question if you're new to the process. It can be easy to get carried away and try polishing a whole hood at once, but it's best to work in, on our product directions, we tend to recommend a 2x2, 2 foot by 2 foot area. Depending on the vehicle, sometimes that can be a little small, but I would say no more than half of a panel at a time. If you're on a big hood, split it into fourths. If you're on a door, at least split it in half, depending on the size of the door. Because if you try to do too much at once, you're going to get focused on finishing that panel versus getting the results that you want. So make sure to keep those section sizes manageable and check your work as you go. You may need to spend a little more time or do a little smaller section so that you're getting through those sections, getting those results faster.
Yeah, and with experience, you'll understand what the upper bound of your kind of square footage is, and the cars are going to dictate that as well. So if I've got a 3 foot long by 1 foot tall front fender on a car, I'm probably going to try and do that total area, and it's not 2 by 2, but I'm focused on it. Whereas something that's taller or a big hood, if I'm stretching to the end of the hood and then coming back all the way down to what is very close to me, you're getting different results. You're applying different pressure versus focusing on an area within that larger panel and then moving down and resetting. Or if something's tall or low, like my Jeep pretty much strikes me right in the middle of my body, So I would do half the door from kind of my waist up, and then I'd sit down on a low creeper to do the lower half. So let the car guide you, but don't stretch it too much unless you can maintain consistent pressure and pad rotation across that surface. But in general, section it off on your bigger panels and let the smaller, more manageable panels tell you how far they've got to be divided up into. Let's see, how often should you polish a daily driver? Again, I think that this goes back to what we coach all the time. What do you want? Do you want the best looking daily driver? I guarantee you, if you take a polisher out and polish your own car, you're gonna have the best looking daily driver of anybody you know.
Yeah.
So knowing that paint is a finite system, it does not make sense to try and polish your car monthly. I would say that unless you're retired and you cannot live with a car that goes out into the world damaged in any way, you probably shouldn't be driving the car anyway. I think that annually, twice is probably the max I would recommend. But in particular, if you're doing like an all-in-one product that's just a mild polish, you could do that every 9 months, and depending on how well protected it is, how much weather that car is exposed to, or like a show car that's coming out from spring to the end of summer, put it in your annual calendar. Before you take it out, you're polishing it. You don't necessarily have to polish it before you put it away and the raccoons and cats run all over the hood while it's parked in your garage.
Yeah.
That doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'd say, maximum 2 times a year is what I would recommend, because there's no need to go that far beyond it, and probably once a year would be my recommendation, in particular with a light colored car and one that you're hand washing, and taking very good care to not use dirty or cheap washing tools or soaps. You're going to find that you have very little polishing work to do if you're on an annual polishing schedule.
Definitely.
Now, I mean, the first time you do it, totally different ballgame. But in terms of routine, that's what I'd recommend.
I kind of want to answer this one just because of the word in it, the word in the answer, Red's Vet. We struggled over saying this word in the initial videos that we did, but Red's Vet asks, how often hours of use should you replace the grease in the head of the polisher? We don't recommend replacing the grease in any of our polishers. We don't recommend trying to disassemble them at home. And our polishers use a Mobil 1 molybdenum disulfide.
Ooh.
Lifetime grease, so
you fancy.
You don't need to replace it. It can actually be pretty difficult to remesh the gears when you're mating the head of the tool back together. So do not disassemble any of our polishers. Do not replace the grease. The grease should last the life of the polisher. If you have issues, they're covered with a lifetime guarantee, so just give us a call. We won't replace it if you can tell that you've disassembled it.
Okay, so Frank Nicoletti, again, we can't answer this enough in this basic polishing forum. Just to be clear about our initial recommendation, I have a 2020 Sonata with 15,000 miles on it. Sorry, you said 14,500. You were very clear about that. Kept in a temperature-controlled garage. What is the best polisher to use? I just recovered from shoulder surgery. So, first and foremost, you just recovered from shoulder surgery, so you should probably not try and polish that car by hand. Yeah. The machine is going to be much lower intensity and fatigue on your joints and just body overall. I mean, polishing an entire car, you'll definitely know that you've worked that day, but in terms of the results you can get by hand versus polisher, there's absolutely no comparison, hand versus machine. I would say that a G9 is going to be your best bet in terms of learning the capability, as we talked about, its ability to accept a lower backing plate and thinner pads as ways to step up its capability and correction. And that will give you the vast majority of those surfaces on the Sonata covered. And once you get comfortable with that, then I'd say a G8, complementary tool. Really, I don't recommend the long throws to somebody that is just maintaining a well-kept car. I recommend that for somebody that's got 3 or more cars that they need to polish and they're trying to get some speed out of it, or if you're starting to do your neighborhood cars, things like that, and you have a little bit of experience. It's not out of the realm of possibility for your first polisher experience to be a G15 long throw random orbital. You can definitely learn to use that tool and get great results and speed out of it. But after shoulder surgery, the G9 is going to be about a pound lighter. It's going to be a little less like finesse and technique required to get a good result on that new of a car. So that's what I'd recommend. And that's what I'd recommend for anybody getting into machine polishing for the very first time. Unless all you have is motorcycles, in which case I'd say a small format tool like the G8 would probably be the one to go with first.
This question comes down to how you define a scratch, Nick, like you talked about during the live event. Joe Koenig asks or says, I have 3 GM cars from 2002 to 2020. I'm having a very hard time removing the scratches from each vehicle using an orbital machine and your professional products, including microfiber pads. So it sounds like you're doing, the aggressive side of the process, but really this depends on how you're defining a scratch. Good rule of thumb is to feel it with your fingernail. If you can catch an edge of that scratch, it's going to be difficult to remove it completely with a random orbital. You should be able to improve it and make it less visible, but taking it all the way out may be impossible with a random orbital, especially if you're through the clear coat. That's going to be a situation where only refinishing will remove the scratch completely. So a lot of this depends on how you define a scratch, but going across it with your fingernail, don't use a lot of pressure so you don't create another scratch, but if you can catch an edge, it's likely that you'll only be able to improve it with a random orbital, especially without going too far into that clear. So swirl marks and light scratches, again, depending on your definition of a scratch, are typically easily removable or possible to remove. If it's a deeper scratch that has an edge to it, you may not. You may have to deal with just improving it and making it less visible.
Yeah, and he's saying he's using the Boss line of abrasives and a microfiber pad. So he is, I would have said if you're using a microfiber pad and you're not getting swirl marks out, it's probably your abrasive. It could be too mild. But I think this is more what you suggested, that with 3 different cars in that age range and GM paint, which I have polished a lot of in my time.
Pretty approachable.
Including my wife's black Denali.
Yep.
I have never found it difficult to remove swirl marks on those cars. Deep scratches, again, if you can see gray, in that same scratch that you've caught your fingernail on, it's through the clear, it's through the color, it's probably to the primer. An orbital's not gonna do that. Unfortunately, touch-up paint or somebody coming in to do some repair is probably your only option. But yeah, we definitely take pains to describe scratch because we're not trying to insult anybody.
No.
But most people do associate scratches with exactly what you described. Yeah.
And there's a saying too, polish to improve, not remove. Sometimes it's better, to settle with improving it and not going so far that you're thinning the paint out so much. You might be removing that scratch and exposing yourself to clear coat failure later on down the road because you're thinning out that clear so much. So there is a type of scratch where it's better to just settle with improvement, not necessarily try to get it all the way out.
Yeah. All right, this is a great one too. Effie Meek says, I've got a 6-inch polisher and basic correcting materials, but what, in a nutshell, do I need to do successful polishing on several cars from older to newer with obviously different needs? Well, once again, I think that if you've already got some products, the first thing to do is jump in, right? And understand that if you've got varying ages of cars and potentially various countries of origin or different manufacturers, those paints are going to respond differently, but you should at least establish a baseline process. And from there, you can, again, build your basic correction materials to incorporate more aggressive abrasives or more mild abrasives, softer, firmer pads. So really, again, as you skew older, you're going to want to be, you might be running into softer paint systems or more damaged paint systems. And with each of those, having more tools at your disposal and doing test sections will help you understand, can I achieve great results on all three of these cars with a single pad type and a single compound type and be happy? If that's the case, that's all you need, man. But if you're trying to achieve perfection on all of them, you may have different responses on those different paint systems in different ages. And so, first and foremost, test some small sections, understand what's going to make you happy in each of those unique scenarios, and then complement your basic setup with some of the tools that you may need. If you do one compound and pad setup on a more modern finish, and it gives you a swirl-free finish, and you're extremely happy, well, on an older, softer system, you might see some micro-marring or some haze due to that paint being a little softer. You might need actually a less aggressive pad and a finer polish, maybe perfecting cream in a yellow pad or perfecting cream in a black finishing pad, to remove those micro-marring from the softer finish and really dial that paint system in. Hopefully your older car is one that's used less and you don't want to polish it routinely and want to understand the finite amount of paint that's there. But get going with what you got, test the same process on all three cars and figure out, hey, I'm in the middle here with this basic process. Do I need to go finer? Do I need to go more aggressive? And then buy the pads and polishes that would correspond with those directions.
Yep. Mario asked, perfecting cream over ceramic 3-in-1 for a newbie. To be clear, ceramic 3-in-1 is a protectant. You never want to use an abrasive product over a protectant or you will remove it. So just general rule, if you've put down anything with protection, don't go back and use an abrasive product over it or you will definitely remove it. Even something as light as perfecting cream.
Yeah, we had a couple questions about that. Would one of you mind grabbing ceramic 3-in-1, the sprayable, for us, just so we can put this on record, because there is some confusion.
3-in-1 and all-in-one.
Yeah.
We did that to ourselves.
We've done it, yeah. So ceramic 3-in-1 is a sprayable ceramic sealant. And we call it ceramic 3-in-1 wax. 3-in-1 actually speaks to the emulsion, the ingredients, SiO2, polymers, and carnauba. Very easy to apply. You would spray this as a true protection after a true correction step. So you don't need a machine for this application. Ceramic all-in-one speaks more categorically to the all-in-one nomenclature that is associated with the combination of an abrasive and protection package, so that this would actually remedy light swirl marks and surface defects and leave behind ceramic protection. And that's where I'm going to stop, because we could get more complicated than that. But they are two different products, similar names, similar protection results that you're going to get from them, very different in terms of how you apply them. So keep that in mind. And sorry for the confusion. Okay.
Go
for it.
Harlan said, new car built September 9th. How long to let the paint off gas before I go at it with your ceramic system? So if you have brand new paint done, typically it's 60 to 90 days to allow it to off gas before you apply protection. But I would definitely recommend consult your painter and ask him. Some paint types are different, but general rule of thumb is 60 to 90 days after the vehicle has been painted. Now we get a lot of questions about, like, oh, I just bought a new car at the dealership. Do I have to wait before I put wax on it? No. If you just bought a new car at the dealership, it's definitely been a period of time since it was painted. Also, new OEM finishes are typically baked at the factory, so they don't require that same off-gassing period that an aftermarket paint job or a touch-up at the body shop, if you got a fender bender and had your front end repainted. That sort of stuff, you want to wait the 60 to 90, but a new vehicle that was painted at the factory typically will not require the same period.
Okay, I'm going to answer two more, then I'll give you one last one, and then we're going to wrap up. We had a lot of questions about proper pad cleaning. You addressed it specifically. You gave like a very quick answer. I'd encourage you, if you're here on Griot's Garage YouTube channel and you want to see the proper pad cleaning process, search how to clean your pads. Sam did the video. It's excellent. It's comprehensive. It's a better visual demonstration than we can demonstrate here. And then Red's Vet says, talk about maintenance on a G8 and a G9, please. So, as we mentioned, our G8 and G9, in fact, all of our corded polishers are brushed motors. The biggest maintenance issue that you're going to have with these tools really is brushes. And we've made brush replacement very easy. They are quick little ports on either side of the body. A standard screwdriver, a light twist, pull the brush out. We do have a replacement set of brushes that comes with your tool in the box. If you have lost or misplaced them, call us. We'll send you another set of brushes. That's about a 5-minute maintenance job. The other elements of maintenance will be these vents behind the motor assembly. If you've used this machine heavily, it can get caked up with dust, whether that be from your polishing environment, from your garage, or where it's stored. You can pop these vents out. Compressed air or a light brush will clean them out. That is another great thing. Backing plates and vent shrouds around, again, really light cleaning. Wipe down will be sufficient. If your backing plate is getting very heavily mucked up, you can shove some toothpicks or pipe cleaners in some of the venting. That will drive that out. Other than that, general wipe downs, my favorite product is either our all-purpose cleaner 20-to-1 sprayed directly on a towel, wipe the tool off. Just making it clean and kind of doing that routine cleaning. Not only do your tools look good and you're putting them away clean, but it's just going to prevent that buildup on all those other materials. But really, that should be all the maintenance you need. As we spoke to, you don't need to replace that gear grease. That is lifetime. If you get into a situation where something else you think is going wrong with your tool due to its age, your use case, we have a lifetime guarantee against defect. Give us a call. We're going to take care of you.
All right, to finish it off, it's another good beginner question, and something we didn't specifically cover during the live. We definitely showed it, but Dennis Barrios asked, what's your method for holding the polisher? So that's a great question. Our polishers are very ergonomic. We put a lot of effort into making these things comfortable for you guys. But I mentioned it briefly during the live. You always want to apply your pressure over the head of the tool. We have this nice foregrip that takes 4 fingers really nicely there. That's going to be probably my favorite place to hold. Any of our orbitals is right up front there. Sometimes you'll see guys that'll cheat 1 finger up on top to get a little more downward pressure. Or you can, of course, grab that platypus head completely there. Just make sure you're not leaning too far forward there. This is going to be one of the best grips for keeping firm downward pressure without getting your pad or your backing plate off camber on the finish. And then, of course, you want a hand on the rear for controlling your speed dial, your trigger lock, and then kind of guiding as your rudder. So I always use my front hand. I'm right-handed, so I keep my left hand on the front of the tool usually. Apply your downward pressure there, and your rear hand is just guiding the tool around as you need to manipulate it as you work your way around the car.
It's kind of a 3-dimensional rudder. In particular, we talked about keeping the pad surface flat. So not only left and right as you kind of find the best way to move it, but also ensuring up and down as you encounter body lines.
All the different angles.
We talked about the desire not to heel or toe to slow pad rotation. But it definitely can be helpful, when you get onto vertical panels. You didn't demonstrate this, but as we mentioned, it's very ergonomic. So when you're on vertical panels, you can grab the body, or again, after you've set the trigger lock, kind of set it in different ways. I've even seen Sam, detail upside down on very low body sections. So the tool,
or if you're short like me, go, reach out over the hood with the trigger lock and holding that center section.
Quite frankly, if you're really reaching, It's going to take a little bit more shoulder strength, but you can hold the pad flat. Because it's not gear driven or rotary, it's not going to pull you. But as soon as you extend that far, you're going to reach some inconsistency and potentially heel in toe. But if you're doing an RV, get up on a platform or something. Nobody wants to be stretching, 5 pounds out, 3 or 4 feet above their head.
Yeah.
But yeah, RVs are a whole nother monster.
Definitely.
So hopefully you're not machine polishing RVs anytime soon or doing it routinely. And if you're doing it professionally, charge some damn good money for that work, okay? RV owners, they can pay for it. I used to charge by the foot for RVs, and it was pretty smart.
Or big boats.
Big boats, yeah. Boats go by the foot as well. And make sure they're not like multiple story yachts.
Yeah.
In
Those
which case,
guys can
again,
definitely pay for it.
yeah, charge those guys. It's called the do it for me market, and you better know what your skill is worth. Well, again, ton of questions, ton of participation, great topic. We're going to be back with our next live event, live from SEMA, October 31st, Tuesday on the Griot's Garage YouTube channel, 4 p.m. Pacific time. Please be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And remember, our liquid car care sale is on until October 3rd, 2023. And
Code's right down there in the corner.
Code's in the corner, SMLDH. That's how Sam and I get compensated, because we don't add much more value. Just kidding. Thank you guys for watching. Have fun in your garage.
Have fun in your garage.